Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I read a lot of books. I am currently in the process of reading the Jessie Hunt psychological suspense thriller, that's what it says on Kindle, by Blake Pierce, and so I'm giving you an update on where I am on that. The last video I did was books 10 to 13, so this will cover books 14 to 16. I'm so absolutely loving this series. I think as somebody who absolutely loves reading detective, murder mystery type stuff, this really is right up my alley. Every book can work by itself, but there is also an underlying story regarding Jessie Hunt, the main profiler. That's whose story you're following through this. So each book has its own little update on where you are in the backstory, while also showing an independent story of Jessie and the police hunting a new murderer. There is the ultimate backstory, but then there's also the independent stories running through, which I haven't really spoken about, the independent stories. I've more been talking about the underlying story through Jessie, which I think is actually a better way to do it, especially for people who want to maybe read these independently, so I'm not spoiling the independent stories. There might be slight spoilers in regards to Jessie's story, but it's just so good, and I find it interesting because when I first started reading it, I just thought, oh, it is just going to be like one person in particular that's going to be kind of in the background of all of these stories, but it hasn't, because they've killed off people, and the author, Blake Pierce, has found ways to replace that underlying story, because it's still ultimately Jessie's story. If you haven't watched these before, please do go back and watch them or read the books, because I will be spoiling stuff as I go through this in regards to Jessie's story, because originally we were looking at the fact that her father was a serial killer, and then as a trainee profiler she was interviewing Bolton in a high security thing, and then through that we've had other people as well. Yeah, and then after her profiler friend from the police station got killed, Garland Moses, the profiler that was originally working for the police station, who got killed by Jessie's ex-husband. I told you there's spoilers in here, but I have talked about this previously. It just meant that there was other stuff to come through. So I think last time we had just found out that the night hunter was still alive. The serial killer that Garland was hunting since he was a young profiler to his old age. And Jessie has moved in to Sue Garland's old house, which was a very, very secure house. It's like Garland knew exactly what he needed and what Jessie needed out of being protected at home. And yeah, so for the past few books we have been looking at finding the night hunter, and we've been getting point of view of the night hunter as well, so that's been interesting. I've chosen now to do a catch up because again somebody has died, and the person who killed this significant person was Jessie's sister. And so in the last two chapters, because it was the last chapter and then I always get prologue and epilogue mixed up. Epilogue. Epilogue is at the end, prologue is at the beginning. Why do I always get those two mixed up? So yeah, we have an epilogue at the end of this one after the last chapter. So the last chapter, you look at Jessie's sister Hannah thinking about what she's done and the fact that she wasn't angry and she wasn't upset at the fact that she killed this person, and that she kind of liked it. And because it says, now weeks later, this is the very, very last sentence, well, the last two sentences of that last chapter. And now weeks later, she, Hannah, could admit something else. She liked it. More than that, she missed it, in reference to killing the person that she killed. It then goes into an epilogue, which tells you who and where it's going next, because in one of the earlier stories, there was a woman called Andrea Robinson, who ended up being the person who killed somebody in one of the independent stories. But since going away, she isn't in prison, she is in a correctional facility. It's called the Twin Towers Correctional Facility, but she's been there for a few books. And Andrea, Andy, as she's mainly referred to, has been keeping in contact with Jessie. In the book that Andy turned up in, both Jessie and Andy were actually friends until the moment that Andy decided to poison Jessie's drink with peanut traces because Jessie is allergic to peanuts. After the death of the other person, it feels like Andy Robinson is going to be coming back in a big way. It feels like she's going to be in the background of the next few books. I say in the background, she's been in the background. It feels like she's coming more forward, and I'm just about to start book 17, yeah, which is The Perfect Veil. So the last 3 books that I read were The Perfect Deceit, The Perfect Mistress, and The Perfect Image. In regards to Jessie's story, we're at a point where it feels like her history can't be used against her anymore, as in like the fact that her father's a serial killer and all that, because the current threat doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with something independent in regards to Andy. So all this backstory that we've had leading up to this point, it feels like we've gone to a point where that it's not as important anymore, because leading up to this point, everything in regards to her father, her ex-husband, Bolton Cratchfield, a lot of that has been wrapped up. At this point though, it's looking at how that all affected both Jessie and her sister. At this point, Hannah has been questioning herself in regards to her own emotions and how she's dealing with things. I mean, she is now in therapy. The character is now in therapy with Jessie's therapist, who I keep getting, every so often I start thinking, is there going to be something coming out about a therapist, or is it just going to be one of those characters that's just a constant background goodie? But every so often I just think, what if? I don't know if it's me just picking up on a red herring or something, but every so often when the therapist comes in, I'm just like, is something going to happen in regards to this therapist, or is she just a constant support? So, because since we met the sister, since we met Hannah has wondered if she might be a psychopath of some kind, how she's not aware of how she handles her own emotions. She has been a bit of a daredevil in the sense of putting herself in dangerous situations for the thrill of it. And that kind of leads into the storyline in regards to the Night Hunter and who Hannah shot. Some people might be able to put some pieces together there, but I'm not going to explicitly state all of that, probably until the next catch-up. Just seeing where this goes with Hannah. It's starting to become a bit more of Hannah's story as well as Jessie's story. And yeah, I am just greatly intrigued as to where this is going to end up. Because as I said, I'm just about to start book 17, and there's 26 books in this series, I think. No, 28. It says I have 18 of 28 items in this series. So I did manage to, because before I was kind of buying them independently, and now I've realised by getting them in like packages, this last one I got 3 books for about 20 quid, but if I'd bought them independently it probably would have been close to 30 quid. So by getting them in a bundle, it has worked out slightly cheaper. I did briefly get Kindle Unlimited to see if that would get me some discount or even free books, but I realised that long term it just wasn't necessary for me to get Kindle Unlimited, because I have a library app. When there's stuff that I actually want to buy, I just buy it because I'm not spending as much of my outgoings on books because I have my library app. It means that if I do want to buy a book, I don't feel as guilty about it, even though I am very much on the don't spend as much money Debs, because you have spent quite a bit of money on books lately, especially topping up the Tess Gerritsen series, which is in the bookshelf behind me. So yeah, I do try to limit the spending on the books because it's a very, very easy way to spend my money, especially when I am saving up and trying to get a deposit sorted and I'm house hunting and things like that. So I'm trying to be very, very careful with my outgoings at the moment. But yeah, I am just absolutely loving them. So I have noticed I haven't read any of the blurbs for these, and it is because I've been trying to keep the independent stories fairly stum and commenting more just on the underlying story in regards to Jessie and Hannah and the boyfriend Ryan, which I might as well say it because they've just announced it properly, I think, to everybody. Actually, I think they're just about to announce it officially to everybody, that Ryan and Jessie are now engaged. They got engaged 2 books ago, I think. I think it was in book 15 they got engaged. And by the end of book 16, they said that they were ready to announce it to everybody else, because they were keeping it secret for a bit. So I think they've literally just told Hannah at this point that they're engaged. So yeah, the love story happy thing is going on there as well. I'm not bored. I'm not bored of it yet. And the fact that each book has its little independent murder mystery in there as well, it keeps me entertained, and I think it's how it mainly keeps it fresh, because it's not just completely all about Jessie, and you see her working and you get to see her trying to figure everything out. Because the amount of times, I'm really impressed with how Blake Pierce has enough stories in there where you can't figure out where it's going, because I think with a lot of murder mystery type stuff, especially when it's such a big series, of trying not to do too much repeating and trying to keep each story fresh and make it not as obvious, like who did it. I'm always very impressed with people who write murder mysteries and how they sort out that web and the puzzle, because I don't think I would ever be able to write a murder mystery, just because I feel like I'd be there going, oh, but so-and-so did this, and then I think I've watched too many to be able to write one. I just think at this point, if I tried to write one, it would be way too obvious. And they say that like reading should actually expand it, but I think because I've been watching like all the Agatha Christie's, like Marple, Poirot, Death in Paradise, just anything with a murder mystery in it, I have been watching since I was practically born, thanks to my mother and my father. Because I've just watched so many, it gets to that point when I'm just like, I don't think I could come up with anything original at this point. We watched an episode of Jonathan Creek the other day, and it was just like, oh, I feel like I need to rewatch Jonathan Creek. Go back to the Caroline Quentin episodes, because those were the best ones. Anyway, I'm going to shut up because I feel like I've been talking for ages. I have got such an eclectic taste in books. I will read anything. I'm currently reading some Alice Oseman stories. It's going to be part of a sequel thing. That's what I'm reading on Borrow Box at the moment. I'm reading a book called Solitaire, and after that I've got its kind of I'm not sure if it's quite a sequel, because Solitaire is supposed to be book 1, and then Nick and Charlie is supposed to be book 2, and both Nick and Charlie are in Solitaire as the main character's brother and boyfriend, so as in the brother's boyfriend. I'm enjoying Solitaire. It's a young adult book, which I don't read many of, but I am enjoying it. So I've got about 150 pages after that, so that can be done very quickly. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Talk to me in the comments, let me know any book recommendations. If you've read this series or anything else that I've been reading, just talk to me. You can talk to me in this one, you can talk to me in whatever video is relevant. Thanks to the new subscribers, I have seen the number creep up again lately, so that's always fun. But yeah, so thanks, stay safe, and I will see you next time with another video. Bye my lovelies.